Okay, we are live here for our 8th of September 2015 weekly help session for production sound. And I've just joined here just on an email for those of you that are part of the course, have already signed up and are looking to join with your webcam into the session here and so we can talk. Go ahead and check your email that you signed up for the course with, and you should have a link there where you can actually come in and join with your webcam. For everyone else, if you have questions, go ahead and if you're over at the Google Plus site, you should be able to leave questions there. And the way you go to that is at plus.google.com and then do a search for Curtis Judd. Once you get to my profile page there, you will see the link to join this session. And you can actually leave you can type a question that will show up here to me. I've got the Q&A panel open here. So if you have any questions, go ahead and leave those over there, and we'll be happy to address those as well. So we'll just sort of hang out here for the next few minutes and let people join up. Hey, all of you that are viewing, if you are enrolled in the class, you can actually join with your webcam. I send a link to you. And those of you that are just viewing and are not enrolled in the class, if you do want to ask a question, go ahead and go. If you're watching this on the Google Plus page, so if you go to Google Plus, do a search for Curtis Judd, get to my profile page and watch from there, you can actually submit questions there, and I'd be happy to answer any of those. So love to hear what you guys have and love to talk it through. So go ahead and leave me those questions over there if you're interested. All right, let's see, we got Matt Burnett watching. Hey, Matt, if you've got any questions, go ahead and if you got the Q&A panel there, go ahead and open that up and love to answer any questions if you've got those. Again, for any of you viewing, if you head over to Google Plus on my profile page, just do a search for Curtis Judd and you watch there, you can leave questions, which I'd love to answer those. Excuse me here, it's allergy season for me here. I'm up in the mountains in Utah in the United States and live up near Park City. And this is, interestingly, the time of year when I get the worst allergies. Looks like we had a few more joiners there. For those of you that just joined, if you join over on Google Plus, I believe you can leave questions and I'd love to answer your questions. And the way you do that is, again, just head over to Google Plus, which is plus.google.com, do a search for Curtis Judd. And once you click and view the Hangout on Air from there, you can actually leave questions and I'd love to answer those. Looks like, Matt, it looks like things keep coming up, but I'm not seeing any question. Apologize for that. Okay. Matt, you've got a question here. Okay, I did an outside interview last week and picked up a lot of cicada buggy noise. Been trying to remove that sound, but also removing some of the dialogue. Any suggestions on isolating just the bug sounds? Ooh, that's a tough one. This dialogue ends up sounding hollow or tinny. Yeah, that's going to be a trick with post-production, removing sound like that. The problem is that the bugs and the cicadas are going to actually, the noise they're making is actually overlapping with the dialogue. So there's no great way to do that, to be honest, in post-production. I think that really the secret on things like that is during production, doing your best to reduce it. And, you know, of course, the best way to do that is, you didn't say here what kind of microphone you're using. I'm going to assume a shotgun microphone. And I don't know if it was, here, let me go ahead and select your question. There we go. If you are using a shotgun mic and you're booming it from above, pointed down at the talent, that's going to have the best chance of actually eliminating a lot of that sound from the cicadas. That would be the number one choice. If you've got a lavalier mic, that can help some as well. The nice thing about lavalier mics is that when you mount it on the person, especially if you have it under the first layer of clothing, which is an ideal way to do it when you're outside anyway, just to avoid any noise you may pick up from wind. It's pretty good at picking up pretty much what is right around. Okay, so you're using an NTG3. Okay, is that mounted on top of your camera or is that mounted on a boom pole aimed down at the talent? This is a great question, by the way, and I think something that people run into all the time, including myself. Sometimes there are just these noises that just are really annoying, and it's hard to manage it. Matt, go ahead. Or, yeah, Matt, go ahead, and if you can just tell me a little bit more about how you have that mounted. If it's on top of your camera, I think that's going to be challenging because the way that works is when you have it mounted on top of the camera, you know, you've got any noise between the talent and the camera is going to pick up noise. Okay, boomed above the talent about a foot away. So you're actually doing everything you can possibly do there. The only thing that's tricky in those cases, and this may sound a little strange. One potential thing you could do, again, in the future, and these aren't usually the best choice for outdoors, but if you've got a lot of noise like cicadas in a tree or something like that, cardioid mics can actually sometimes work better than a shotgun or a hypercardioid mic in that case, believe it or not. And that's because it picks up very, very little on the backside. If you think of the polar pattern, it's, you know, if it goes something like this, it's going to pick up most down here in the front, but then it cuts everything off on the back. And that's where something in the cardioid range might be helpful. Those are tough because they can be very sensitive to noise. So you're going to have some way, or to wind. So you're going to have some way to manage that. But my first choice there would be, if I'm really having trouble with cicadas or other bugs, is trying a cardioid mic may be the best option there. I know that's not a free option. I realize that. And that's a really great question, Matt. But that's probably the first thing I would try there. So, and as far as everything else you're doing, it sounds like you're doing exactly right. I mean, you're booming just right, all that sort of business. So a blimp, and your follow-up question, would a blimp have helped? A blimp, probably not a lot. Really a blimp, ideally a blimp design, these are the big wind covers that you can use outdoors for those that aren't familiar with that, but these that you put over your shotgun mic, and those are nice from the standpoint that they help avoid any wind that directly hits the capsule of the microphone, and they're meant to be as transparent as possible in terms of picking up all of the sound that's there. So I don't think a blimp really would have helped in that case, because again, they're meant to actually pick up all the sound that's there, and the cicada noise is sound that's there. What they're best at doing is actually avoiding the sound or the wind that actually hits the capsule and makes distortion, which is a completely different thing. So unfortunately, no, I don't think that would have helped. I think ideally, a cardioid mic inside of a blimp would have been really good. Some time ago, I actually reviewed the Rode NT5, I think it was, and I actually bought a third-party capsule and put it on there. It actually had a pretty decent sound, and that kind of mic inside of it, and it's a cardioid pickup pattern mic, that inside of a blimp probably would have been a nice one, because then you would have had the wind protection, but then you would have the cardioid pattern that would have avoided some of the sound, not all of it, but a lot of the sound of the cicadas. So just something to consider. I know that's a tough one, Matt, and I don't know if there's a really great solution to that, but those are some things to consider there. You could also try lavalier mics as well. All right, great question. Thanks for that one, Matt. Let's see here. Next one up. Get that one taken care of. Okay, let's see here. I think the next one was from, and I apologize, I don't have the best pronunciation here, but Witsy. I'm not sure how you say that, so I apologize in advance. What's my favorite lavalier microphone? Well, I have a confession to make. I am not a huge fan of lavalier microphones. I use them because I have to in some circumstances, but I don't love them. The fact of the matter is, to me, they sound very much like lavalier microphones. They're attached to someone's body, so they're going to pick up a lot more of the chest sound. But when I do have to use one, my very favorite is the Countryman B6 lavalier mic, which I reviewed just probably about a month or two back over on the channel. If you're interested in hearing about that one is really nice, very sensitive, has a nice warm sound to it. I actually just recorded it into a Zoom H1, so it's just a little handy recorder, $99 handy recorder, and the sound you can get out of that is actually quite impressive. You can also hook it into something like a Rode Link, most of the wireless systems actually you can hook it into. You can get the connector that's appropriate for whatever wireless system you have. You can actually, even if you wanted to, plug it directly into your camera if you've got a 3.5 millimeter input on that. So hopefully that helps you. That's my favorite lavalier microphone at present. It's not a cheap one. As I recall, it's somewhere in the $280 range. So it's not a cheap one, but that's my favorite one. If you're talking my favorite cheap one, I think my favorite cheap one probably is still the JK Mic J044, which I also reviewed. That one only costs about $29 US, and again, plugging that directly into a Zoom H1 does a pretty nice job. So those are a couple to consider. Again, reviews for both of those are over on the channel if you're interested. Thanks for that question. All right. Let's go on to the next one here. Actually, Scott Vanderbilt actually had a comment here. It looks like it was aimed at Matt's earlier question. Was the dialogue recorded with just a boom, or did you have a lav mic as well? A lav probably would have worked best under those circumstances. If you absolutely must salvage this interview, you could try Isotope RX4 Advanced, warning, not cheap. And then it cut it off there, Scott. I'm not sure why. I guess it has a limit on how long the comment can be. But I think I agree with you, Scott, that a lav is probably a good idea when you're outside and you're not sure. And that's actually, when I do use a lav, that's the circumstances I will use it most often as his backup to another mic that hopefully will work better. Oh, here's the rest of it, Scott continued, but you will only be able to reduce, not eliminate the noise. And I agree with that. The noise reduction in Isotope RX4 Advanced is very good. It's also very easy to use. There's not a lot, the settings are two sliders, and it's pretty easy to use. And I've gotten really good results with that. In Adobe Audition, there's also some noise reduction. That one's a little bit more fiddly, and you have to really kind of tweak it and go back and undo and try again. And but again, it can end up with that really tinny sound. But also, again, just I think Scott indicates that as well. You'll really only be able to reduce the prominence of the cicadas and not probably completely eliminate them. So those are all great points. By the way, RX4 Advanced, just to put everything into context and to be completely transparent, when Scott says that's expensive, I believe it's priced at $1,200 US, so it is a pretty pricey piece of software. However, if you're doing a lot of audio production, it is a worthwhile investment. And in fact, if it comes down to that or a fancy new camera, if you've got a reasonable camera that's working for you now, I would probably put the money into RX4 Advanced. I know that's a bold statement, but something to consider. So good questions, and thanks, Scott, for your input on that. I appreciate that. All right. And we got Matt. Yeah, gotcha. Thanks for the answers. I'll try cardioid. Sounds good. And also a lavalier. So thanks, Matt, again for the question. Okay. We have another one here from Philip Allen. We hear of so many options when choosing boom mics, lavs, etc. Do you see a big difference between Sennheiser and Rode that should influence a purchase? I think that's a good question as well. And to be honest, I think that it becomes a at some level, it's a personal preference issue. Every sound engineer has their own kind of bias or preference. I guess preference is probably a better word for it. I think Sennheiser generally aims at the higher end. They do have some lower end mics as well, but I think a lot more professionals are probably using, maybe, at least of those professionals that I know, it seems like more of them are probably using Sennheiser products versus Rode products. But I don't think that that alone is a factor. If you find a mic that you like the sound of and that you like how it works, you like the sort of the tonal qualities it has with the talent that you're working with, I think there's nothing wrong with Rode products. Obviously, I have a bunch of them. In fact, I have a Rode NT1A was my first mic, my first kind of XLR-based microphone that I ever purchased. I have a Rode NTG2, NTG4 Plus, NT5. I've got the Rode Lavalier. So I've been actually pretty happy with Rode. I don't have a lot of Sennheisers. In fact, this coming month, I'll be reviewing the Sennheiser AVX wireless lavalier system, their new digital system. And I'm looking forward to that. And I'll actually be testing, if it's possible, hopefully it is, I'll be testing the version that has the MKE2 microphone bundled with it, not the ME2. The ME2 is the lower end mic. MKE2 is the higher end lavalier mic. So if you've got the budget, I don't think there's anything wrong with Sennheiser. I think Sennheiser makes fantastic audio gear. And in fact, I would say generally most of it sits in a kind of the next level up, the next league up, if you will, from Rode. So I think it depends on your budget. And if you're investing for the long term, I think there are a lot of really good Sennheiser products. So for example, right now for me, the Rode Link as a wireless system is working just fine. If I were to do pieces where I'm going to be on, say, a show floor or someplace where there's a ton of Wi-Fi traffic, I'm not sure how well the Rode Link will hold up. It's done fine where I've been. So I've been in office buildings where I'm doing corporate work, corporate videos, and there are 10 to 20 Wi-Fi network hotspots in that area, and Rode Link has held up just fine. The interesting thing with the Sennheiser, on the other hand, the AVX, it actually uses a completely different frequency range than Wi-Fi. So there should be less interference. We'll see when I get to do some tests, but I wouldn't say just on brand alone that should be your only only point in making a decision as to which microphone or which audio gear to buy. So good question, Philip. I appreciate that. Thanks for asking that one. All right, next up. And again, I've got some international names here that I apologize. I don't know how to answer. Lambao. And again, I'm not sure if I got that right, but you're saying, I'm trying to start a YouTube channel and I bought a Video Mic Pro. The volume sound that I'm capturing is too low on my PC in Adobe Audition. Is it something wrong with what I'm doing? Well, that depends on a lot of things. So typically when you're kind of the overall view from my point of view is when you're capturing sound, you want to be kind of careful, because with digital sound, if you capture a sound that's too loud or too close to the top limit, there's a very serious danger that you could clip while you're recording. And when you clip, it distorts, and there's not really a great way to fix that. So it's best to record something that's a little bit tamer. So ideally, if you're looking at a peak meter on your camera, if you can get it to peak when someone's talking, for example, if you're recording dialogue, peak it at -12 dB, that's ideal. And then once you bring it into your computer, all you need to do in Adobe Audition is normalize it and bring the levels up so that all the peaks are where you want them, whatever that may be. And that's going to depend on whether you're trying to do it here, you're trying to do YouTube. I do have a video over on my channel if you want to go check that out. That talks about loudness normalization. Actually, just the most recent one I think was actually talking about audio dialogue post-processing. And you may want to take a look at that video. That was done somewhere I think I did that last November, December, maybe January, February this year, somewhere in that time frame. And I think that'll give you a little bit more perspective. But no, I think it's perfectly normal that when you're actually recording, that it's a little bit lower than you're actually going to want it when you actually publish it on YouTube. So that's perfectly normal. And I think that's usually how you want it. And then you do some post-processing afterwards. It's ideally how I do it. Now, if you're in a case where you just want to quickly record and quickly upload and be done with it, your options are a little bit more limited. So in that case, I think, say, for example, if you're editing in Premiere, there is a normalize function within Premiere, just so you never have to leave Premiere and go to Audition. But if you are going to audition, check out that video I did, and that'll kind of give you a kind of an in-depth, not an in-depth workflow, but a more little bit heavier handed workflow that kind of fine tunes the audio a little bit more. So thanks for that question. I appreciate that. Okay. IGIS Productions has several questions. Okay, let's take the first one here. Any comment on the coming Zoom F8? Yes, I have a lot of comments on the Zoom F8. I received my F8 about, for those of you that aren't familiar with it, Zoom, who makes the H4n, H5, H6, has a new field recorder called the Zoom F8. They're trying to aim at the professional market with this one. It costs $1,000. It has, again, 8 inputs. So that kind of interesting. It's really pretty interesting, that one. One of the things that really drew me to it is I wasn't so interested in 8 channels, I'll be honest. Like 4 channels is typically enough for the corporate work that I do. But what really intrigued me about it, first of all, build quality was much better than any of the previous Zoom recorders, and also better than most of the Tascam recorders. Like I was mainly shooting with the Tascam DR60D Mark II, plastic body, not the greatest build. If you ever drop that thing, good chance you're going to break it. F8 has much better build quality. The preamps are fantastic on the Zoom F8. I love the preamps. They have really done a nice job on that. The little potentiometers, those are the little, the pots, the dials, if you will, that you use they're actually for setting gain. They're not faders like you would normally expect on a pro level recorder or mixer. Which is a little bit weird, but then they also have a wireless mobile app. So you just on your iPhone or your iPad, you run an app that connects to the Zoom F8, and you can do all your mixing on the mobile app. Now, the big question there is whether or not the latency is bad, because if the latency is bad, it makes it kind of a difficult thing to mix on. But I've actually found it to be so good so far. So really happy with that. I love that there's an external high-res connector to bring in professional level batteries, so you're not tied to just using the AA batteries inside the Zoom F8. I haven't done my test yet. I actually have some Eneloop Pro batteries on order. They should arrive later this week, that I'll be using to test the battery life when you're running the F8 from AA batteries, and it uses 8 of them. So we'll see how that holds up. I expect probably, if you're phantom powering more than 1 or 2 mics, I'm expecting maybe 4 hours. So it's probably not an amazing battery life that way, but it's nice to have the external option to use a professional battery. And I've got an Anton Bauer battery hooked up to it, and that lasts me about 25 hours, it looks like. So that's an awesome option. I've got that in my new sound bag, and that works great. Are there any downsides with the Zoom F8? I'm not finding huge downsides. Some people, and at first, when you plug in the headphones and you're monitoring with the headphones, it doesn't sound exactly like what's actually being recorded. So there's some coloration or something going on there. At first I thought it was noisy. I don't think it's actually noisy. I think it's something else going on there. I haven't completely put my finger on it. It's not perfect, but I don't think that's a total showstopper either. I think for some pros, for them, that may be a showstopper. For me and the type of corporate shoots that I'm doing, I think it's totally fine. I think for most enthusiasts and indie filmmakers, it's going to be fine. But some people with really discerning requirements on that front may be a little disappointed with the headphone preamp. I don't think there's anything that Zoom can do in a firmware update to change that. I could be wrong, but I doubt it. I bet it's a hardware thing. So if I had to pick anything as a potential downside on the Zoom F8, that's the one I would say for now. But otherwise, I absolutely love this thing. The build quality is awesome. The preamps are amazing. There's plenty of gain. Tons of gain, 75 dB, which is more than you get in any of the other previous Zoom or the lower end Tascam products as well. So there are a couple of thoughts. I hope that was helpful for you. Let's see here. Any comment on DPA lavalier microphones, again from IGIS Productions? I have not used them. I take that back. I have had one experience with them in a musical setting. So I was doing sound for a live music performance, and one of the musicians who was playing a violin actually had his mic with a DPA lavalier that was out on a boom arm that came out over his instrument, and it was positively beautiful. It was a beautiful sound, seemed very natural. It didn't have the harsh quality that some of those lavaliers, when you boom out over a violin, can have. And a violin is a very tough mic, or tough instrument, I think, to mic. My wife plays violin, and it's very easy for most mics to get sounding very, very harsh with violins. And so I was very impressed that the DPA handled that very nicely, very smooth, very clean, very natural sound. So that's my experience with DPA lavalier mics so far. I haven't done a lot with them, or I haven't done anything with them with dialogue yet. So when I do, I'll definitely have something featured on the channel about that. So good question on that one as well. Thanks for that. All right, let's see. What question do we have here next? Scott left another item here real quick. To augment what Curtis has said, here's a great F8 review from point of view of a pro sound mixer. That's Jose Freres, I think you say his name, and that's actually one that I saw as well. He said the same thing about the headphone preamp. He also had some perspective. I would definitely consider his point of view. He is probably more of the pro sound guy than I am. I'm more of a one-man band corporate video guy. So I operate camera and sound. He is actually more of a location sound professional. So he does nothing but sound, operating from a sound bag with a boom and lavs. He's probably someone whose opinion is very much worthwhile. So I would highly recommend you take a look at that review as well. Now he was pretty critical of some things, and actually that's one other thing that is a downside. Again, not a showstopper for me, but one thing he pointed out is the limiter is not an analog limiter. And you might ask, well, why does that matter? Well, limiters are only really good if they're, as far as production sound is concerned, if they are in the analog stage of the device. That is to say, when the sound comes into the preamplifier, the limiter needs to do its job there. If it doesn't do it there and it waits until it's in the digital, once the sound gets converted to digital, the damage has already been done. So if a sound comes out and it's too loud, it'll go into the analog to digital converter and it will already be distorted. And there's nothing that a limiter in the digital domain can do to fix that. And unfortunately, in the Zoom F8, that's where the limiter is. It's in the digital part of the signal chain. And so, again, the damage has already been done. For a pro sound guy, that could be a showstopper that does nothing but sound. In my case, again, I'm usually doing corporate interviews where the talent is, again, it's going to be an interview mainly, or a talking head type of capture. And the dialogue doesn't usually change that much. I'm there mixing. If they're laughing, that's usually the loudest thing that I'll record. I can usually manage that without any sort of distortion. So it's not usually a problem for me. For someone that, for example, is filming reality TV and they've got 8 people locked up, they're trying to mix all that and things can go crazy. People can start screaming and yelling. That's a different story. And in that case, probably the Zoom F8 is not the right tool for the job. So thanks for that, Scott. I think that's a great point. That's a great review. Okay. IGIS Productions has another question here. Let's see what this is. I see one chapter of the course that for any reason is not available. Could I expect it soon? If you wouldn't mind clarifying that with another question real quick, I would appreciate that. So I definitely want to answer your question on that, but I'm not sure. So is it, I think there are a couple of chapters that are coming soon. I'm not sure exactly when. The one that I'm going to publish this week actually has to do with booming a microphone. So actually operating boom poles and actually looking at some of the wind cover options. I actually had an opportunity to compare. You probably saw on my channel the Rycote modular windshield kit. But I also got a chance to work a little bit since then with the Rode Blimp, which is about half the price. And from my experience, it works just as well. So there will be another episode coming up, at least in this week. Expect the boom pole one, the one about the windshields, maybe this week, possibly next week. So those are the 2 that are coming up here most in the near future. There are others that are queued up that I do have in the queue to work on, and I'll plan on doing at least one a week. So that's the plan for going forward. Hope that answered your question there. All right, we have Manchester Music UK. And this is a question I've seen a lot. Which lavalier mic would you recommend in prank videos? I would say it depends on what you're doing. So are you going to use a wireless system? If you're going to use a wireless system, and there's your question again. Yeah. So if it's a wireless lavalier system, I really like RodeLink. That works really well. If you're going to be within, if the camera is going to be within, I would say about 50 meters of the transmitter, and the transmitter is not going to be going around any corners or being blocked in terms of line of sight. So those are some things to consider. If you are going to be, if the person in the prank video is potentially going to be walking around corners or out of sight of the camera or blocked by something between the camera and the person talking, a really inexpensive solution that I've used to good effect, and again, I haven't done prank videos, but kind of the poor man's wireless lavalier system that I've used is a Zoom H1 audio recorder, and then just a lavalier plugged into that. And you can do any lavalier. If you need to stay on the cheap end, a Zoom H1 and a JK Mic J044 is a fine combination. You can find information on that over at my channel at YouTube. I've reviewed both of those together, so that's one worth looking at. Again, we talked about just a little earlier, my favorite lavalier microphone, really, it's not a cheap one, but my favorite one in terms of its sound, which also can record with a Zoom H1 if you wanted to, or it could record with any of the wireless systems, including RodeLink, is the Countryman B6. And actually for the Countryman B6, B as in Bravo 6, can be used with pretty much any wireless system. You can get a connector to work with any wireless system, from the cheapest little Zoom H1 recorder to Electrosonics and all of the other really kind of high-end pro stuff as well. So that's something to check out. So again, least expensive option, go check out the channel for the JK Mic J044, and best wishes on your new prank YouTube channel. All right, so you're using the Black, okay, I see you said we're using the Blackmagic Cinema Camera 2.5K. Okay, yeah, and you are going wireless. I would say Countryman B6 is my favorite. And if you need to keep the budget, keep to a tighter budget, look at the JK Mic J044. Okay. And IGIS Productions, thank you so much for your answers. I appreciate that. Thanks for your questions. This is working well. Thanks, you guys. Really appreciate all the questions. We've got an open queue. If any of you have more questions, go ahead. Oh, here comes one right now. Okay. This is from Manager Shop. We've got, which one is a better solution, the Zoom H6 plus the SGH6 shotgun, or Zoom H6 plus Rode NTG4 Plus? Well, that's a good question. I believe the SGH6 is the Zoom mic that you can actually attach directly to the Zoom H6. I haven't used that mic myself, to be 100% honest and open. So I can't really say for sure in terms of how that one sounds. I haven't even had experience in terms of hearing any recordings with it, so I don't know how it sounds. It always seemed like, I will be honest, I hope this doesn't sound harsh, it seemed like an odd solution to me from Zoom. I don't know why you'd want to hook up a shotgun microphone to the recorder, because then you have to boom the entire recorder plus the shotgun mic, which seemed a little strange to me. That's more weight than you really want to have out on the end of a boom pole. Because if that thing, if it's a stationary boom and it falls over, now you've lost a $400 recorder plus however much the microphone cost, potentially. And then if you're just going to mount it on top of your camera, that's not a great way to mount a shotgun microphone. You're going to pick up a lot more ambiance that way, and it's not going to be as clean of a dialogue recording. So I'm making some assumptions here that you're recording dialogue, so on and so forth. So I would say that probably the Zoom H6 and the Rode NTG4 is a better choice, because then you've got a cable you can run between the NTG4 Plus. Now, boom that right up above your talent, so you get a nice, clean, really warm dialogue recording, and then you can put your recorder wherever you need to put it. So that would be my bias. Some other people may have a different opinion. Some people may have used the Zoom H6 and the SGH6 shotgun with good effect. You can put it up on a boom. I would just say don't plan on mounting that on your camera as a solution to get awesome dialogue audio. You can do that in certain circumstances to get okay audio, but it's not going to sound that much better than your camera's built-in mic. So hope that was helpful for you. And I think that's a great question. Thanks for asking that. Okay, Manchester Music UK is back with a follow-up. question. What about if we use the Rode SmartLav Plus into an iPhone 6 Plus for the prank videos? Would that be recommended by you? Thanks again. You bet. Yeah, that's a fine solution as well. Now, the Rode SmartLav Plus is pretty decent. It's very convenient, and being able to hook it up to your phone, which you probably already have, which is less money spent. That's great. The SmartLav Plus, I believe, is about $79 US. So, in pounds or Great British pounds or euros, that's going to be a pretty reasonable mic to buy in any case. I think it's a fine solution. It depends on your production value goals. I think you can probably do better than that, but that's a very good affordable solution as well. So SmartLav Plus, we've got a review on that one over on the channel as well. That one I liked. I think it's one of those cases where it's very convenient. The sound is pretty good. It's not the most awesome lavalier mic I've ever heard, if we're being honest. And I've said that a lot, I apologize. But it's a pretty good one. It's not like those 99-cent lavaliers you see sold on eBay. It sounds much better than those. But it has plenty of gain, works great with the iPhone. So I think it's a good choice, yeah. If you want to get a sample of what that sounds like, check out the review on the channel if you haven't seen that. All right. Thanks for that. We've got an empty queue again. If you have questions, love to hear them. We've got another 15 minutes or so that we'll be doing the session. I need to take a sip of water if you'll excuse me just a second here. Okay, another follow-up question. Manchester Music UK, will it capture, it being the SmartLav Plus, the sound of people around me or the people who I am pranking? If you're up close to them, if you're within a meter or so, yeah, it definitely will. If you're 6 meters from them, no, not really. But that's the challenge of prank videos. That's always going to be a challenge regardless of what you're doing. And the whole idea with the prank videos, you can't have a mic that is obvious and sticking out because then they know they're being pranked probably. So lavaliers are the way to do it. If you can get up close to them, yeah, it'll probably work pretty well. And I agree. Actually, Scott just came in with another comment here. Thanks, Scott. Absolutely right. The single most important factor affecting audio quality is proximity to the source. Quality of mic or recorder is not nearly as important. Inverse square law rules all. And I completely agree. Getting the mic close to the source of the sound is the #1 thing. So I wouldn't worry as much about the mic itself. I agree. I think the SmartLav Plus will be just fine. The secret is being able to get up close. And I haven't done prank videos, so I don't know all the secrets to prank videos, but I think the secret is you're going to have to get as close as you can to make the clearest dialogue of the person being pranked. So some things to consider there. I don't know exactly what your plan is. I've seen, some prank videos where you see, I remember this one where this guy was, he was one of the bigger prank YouTube channels, and I don't remember all the details, but he was kind of leaning into his car and he accused some guy that walked by of looking at his butt and, went on and on. And they were standing probably 5 or 6 meters apart. It was really tough to hear the guy that was being pranked. You could also there are those specialty mics with the parabolic things behind them. If you've got someone that's hidden a little farther away and can perfectly aim those, you could potentially use something like that. But I don't know anything about those mics, I'll be honest. Those are used, obviously on the sidelines at most, not at most, but at some professional sporting events. So I don't know as much about those, but that's another thing to consider if you're really going to be working farther away from the person that you're pranking. So some thoughts there. And again, thanks, Scott, for your input. I appreciate that. All right, Manager Shop, thanks so much for your answer and tons of YouTube super videos. My pleasure. Thanks for the feedback. Appreciate that. Okay. We've got time for more questions here if any of you have them. I don't know, the viewers count here, I'm not sure. So it says we have 17 viewers right now. Thanks all of you for checking in. If you have questions, it's not clear to me. I don't think you can post the questions on YouTube to get them answered right away. That'll show up later when the video posts. But if you do have a question right now that you want to ask, come over to plus.google.com, look up my name, Curtis Judd. And if you view it from there, I believe that's where you can leave the questions. So just in case anyone has joined since we discussed that earlier. We do have just probably, 13 more minutes according to my clock here. So we'll stick around. And if you head on over there and you have questions, love to hear your questions there. We can talk about that. Scott, I'm curious. I have a question for you if you're still there. You seem to know a lot about audio, and I'd love to know what your background is. So just toss that one back your way if you're still there. I also wanted to say thank you. A while back, I posted a video about comparing let's see, it was the Sound Devices USB Pre 2 to various other recorders. And the thinking when I went into that was that, hey, here is the equivalent of a high-end field recorder compared to some lower-end field recorders. How do they compare? Do they sound any different? And Scott, you left an insightful comment there, and I wanted to thank you for that again. You essentially pointed out the flaw in my reasoning, which was that was the same as the 7 series recorders from Sound Devices, and in fact, that's clearly not the case. So I appreciate that. And sure enough, Scott, you are a production sound mixer. So sometime we need to have you on the channel. I need to interview you if you're up for that. I would love to pick your brain on some items, and I'm sure our audience here would love to hear some things that you have to say as well. So if you're game, let me know. We'd love to have you on. Okay, follow-up question, Manchester Music UK. What about for fitness videos, as there are 3 of us? So what type of mic would you recommend we use, as we need to capture the audio of more than one person at the same time inside a gym? There are a couple of considerations there. I would say that a lavalier is one option there, but that's tricky in a gym because you've got the people moving around. I think the most common thing I've seen in fitness videos is usually the kind of the over the ear with the little mic that comes out like that is probably a really good choice. I wouldn't think that you could effectively mic 3 people in a gym with one mic. I think you probably want to have 3 mics. And I know maybe that's not doable. I totally understand if it's not, but ideally each person will have their own mic, and a wireless system with the over ear kind of mic that comes down to the mouth is probably the best, because that way it sticks with them as they turn their head, and which there could potentially be in a workout type of video type thing. So that's probably the best and the most common that I've seen. So something to consider there. In terms of options there, maybe Scott has some recommendations, but I know that Countryman has some offerings in that range. Shure has plenty of offerings in that type of mic. I don't have a lot of direct experience with those myself, but those are brands that I would trust. I'd probably look at Countryman first if I were looking at those. Okay. All right, next question. Are there upcoming reviews for the Zoom F8 and Asden SGM250? I'm interested in them myself. Yes. So let me tell you a little bit about where we're at there. The Zoom F8 I got a couple of weeks ago, and I've been working with it and absolutely love it. I talked about it a little bit earlier on this session. So once this posts, you can go back and listen to the first part again where I talk about it. Mostly upside on the Zoom F8. I really like it. I am not sure, despite what Zoom is marketing it as, I'm not sure that most production sound professionals, people that earn their living by recording sound for film, I'm not sure it's the right device for them. For them, still, there's a definite case for some of the higher end recorders from Zaxcom, from Sound Devices, and others. So, but for independent filmmakers, someone who is not earning their primary living, and this is my bias here, but someone who's not earning their primary living as a sound production person, I think the Zoom F8 is a fantastic device. I think you cannot rely on its limiter because, again, it's in the digital stage. So yeah, we will have a full review coming up on that. And by full, that's going to be tough because there's so much to talk about when you get to a recorder of that level. It may be a series of episodes, but yes, we're definitely planning on that. And in fact, let me come back to that in just a second. SGM 250 shotgun microphone from Asden. For those of you that are not familiar with that, that's a new shotgun mic, relatively new within the last 6 months from Asden. Asden kind of has been in the lower end of the market for quite a while, and this is kind of for them a step up into the enthusiast realm with a little bit more serious product. And I've been actually really happy with that mic. I would consider it a direct competitor with the Rode NTG2 microphone and NTG1. And I think Sennheiser has I think it's the ME66 or something in that range as well. But relative to the Rode NTG2, I can give you just a little, my impression so far is that I think that the Asden with its newer design, obviously the NTG2 came out years ago. So it's been around for a while. It's a decent mic. Needs a pretty good preamp behind it to sound really its best, but pretty decent mic for those that are kind of buying their first XLR-based shotgun microphone. But the SGM 250 from Asden, I think, has the edge on the NTG2 in terms of noise, self-noise. It's a little bit cleaner. It is less sensitive, however, than the Rode NTG2. And the NTG2 is not the most sensitive mic itself, so that's not awesome. I think that you can get away with, if you've got a decent preamp behind it, and it doesn't require a super expensive preamp, but even like a Tascam DR60D Mark II did fine. I recorded it, both of them actually, and you'll see this in the review that comes out this week. I recorded both the NTG2 and the Asden SGM 250 with a Zoom H4n, because that's a complaint I hear a lot from people is, hey, I've got an NTG2 and a Zoom H4n, and it's just a noise nightmare. and I understand why they say that. The preamps on the Zoom H4n are not amazing in terms of noise performance, but the Asden did a little bit better than the NTG2 did. So it does seem a little bit better from that standpoint. Great warranty, just like Rode, a 10-year warranty. So it's a pretty good mic. So look for that review coming later this week, probably either tonight or tomorrow night, my time. So good question. Thanks for that. All right. Here's the next question. And I've always wondered how you say this. Is it trilobit 00 or trilobite? I'm not sure. My wife is a paleontologist, so I would always say trilobite, but I'm not sure if that's a play on words. In any case, for my YouTube videos, I use my camcorder, which is a Canon Lagria or HF10, or my 70D with built-in microphones. Canon offers a wireless microphone, WMV1. Is it worth to upgrade? I have to confess I have never used that mic, so I'm not really sure. Don't really know what its performance is like. So I'm sorry I couldn't help you. If some point I get my hands on one, I will definitely review it though. My sense is that, I'm not going to say. I just don't know. Just don't know enough about that microphone to really say. If anyone else here does though, and you'd like to help out our friend here, Trilobit or Trilobite 00, if you could leave a comment, that'd be super helpful. All right, back to Manchester Music UK. What about something like the Rode Video Mic? I assume we're talking back about exercise videos. As a shotgun microphone, the Video Mic Pro, I would go with the Pro, not the Rode Video Mic, to be clear here. Go with the Rode Video Mic Pro if you are going to use something like that. It does not have the most narrow pickup pattern of any shotgun mic out there. So it could work if the people are pretty close together. You're gonna wanna boom it up above them. You need to get it in pretty close to them. Just mounting it on top of the camera, it'll work, you'll get audio, but it won't sound that much better than the camera's inbuilt microphone in most cases. So yeah, if you can boom it up close to the 3 people, if they're working pretty close, you could probably make that work. So that's definitely something to consider. Okay, Casey, City Hall. Hi Curtis, what do you think would be a good next upgrade coming from a Blue Snowball desktop mic for doing YouTube videos? Okay, that's a good question. I actually, that was my very first microphone that I ever bought, the Blue Snowball. And it's actually not a bad mic. It's a USB mic that goes directly into your desk, your computer, and it works okay. It's actually kind of a unique one. It's actually a relative. I think it's a smaller diaphragm than a lot of other mics. I'm going to assume a couple things, Casey, and you can correct me in the comments here if I'm wrong. Number one, probably you're recording at home, and probably at your home the room is not acoustically treated, so there is some reverb in the room and some echo that you're hearing, and so you probably want to avoid some of that. So I would, if you're going to be in front of the, well, here's just one thought to consider. I'm today here using, you can see that. That is the Audio-Technica AT 2005. This is an interesting mic because it's a dynamic mic, first of all, which is probably pretty good, a good choice if you can get it up close to you like this. If you're doing just talking head type video, that can work really well in acoustically untreated spaces because it is not as sensitive. First of all, it's got a cardioid pickup pattern, so it's going to reject the noise behind it. But it's also not as sensitive as a lot of other mics, so it's going to be probably, okay, we got the right, correct and correct, okay, good. If you can mount it something like this, get it up close to you, this is a good choice because it doesn't pick up as much of the reverb in the room. It's cardioid pickup, so it's going to reject some of the other noise in the room. It has a couple of options, which is kind of interesting on the back here. I don't know if you can see it. There's actually an XLR connector and a USB connector and a 3.5 millimeter input for headphones. You can monitor while you're recording if you need to do that for whatever reason. Good for podcasting, good for situations like this. I'm actually monitoring right here. But this is it's pretty versatile because you can actually hook it into a proper XLR preamp if you upgrade to that at some point in the future. But right as soon as you get it, you can use it with USB directly into your computer. So I will say that in my review, and there's a review of this on my channel that you might check out if you haven't seen that before. Again, the ATR 2005 from Audio-Technica. It sounds a lot better if you can plug it into a good preamp using an XLR input, but it also works in a pinch with USB directly into your computer. And that's how I'm using it today with USB. It's a little bit brighter and a little harsher when you're using the USB because it's doing all the preamplification right here in the mic itself. And it's not the highest quality preamplifier analog to digital converter. So that I think is a good choice. And it costs about, I think it's usually around $50 US is the price on that. So definitely something to consider there. There are lots of other choices as well. So thanks for that question, Casey. Okay, Scott, thanks. I'm a big fan of your videos on the camera side and post. I want to start doing documentaries, thus my interest. Great. Thanks again, Scott. I appreciate your input, even just today and on all the videos where we've seen you in the past. And again, if you are interested, I'd love to reach out to you after this and see if you'd be interested in doing a Google Hangout here that would go on the channel. I'd love to get some of your thoughts and ideas as a production sound mixer. All right, Manchester Music UK. This will be our last question. It's time to quit, but we'll get this last question here. Is there a Rode VideoMic Go for the Blackmagic Cinema Camera 2.5K? Any good for general videos or fitness videos or even vlogs? Ooh, that's a tough one. The Cinema Camera is not known for having the best microphone preamplifier in the first place, so that's going to be a tough, it's going to be tough to pull that off. The Rode VideoMic Go is not the most sensitive mic, so it's a kind of a tough combination. I would say avoid that if you can. I would say that the Rode VideoMic Pro into something like a Zoom H1 that you later sync in post would be a better option than either of those if sound quality is your #1 goal. If convenience is your goal, I haven't used the VideoMic Go with the Blackmagic Cinema Camera, so I can't say. I do know that the Blackmagic Cinema Camera does not have the best preamp, so it's going to be a tough. And the Rode VideoMic Go is a non-powered microphone, so it needs a lot of gain. And so that means you're going to have to push the Blackmagic Cinema Camera preamp pretty hard, which is probably not going to result in great audio. So that's probably something to consider. If you can move up to, again, the Rode VideoMic Pro and get a separate recorder and then sync and post, I think you'll have a much better chance of getting the sound you're looking for. So thanks for that question as well. Casey, you're awesome. Curtis, thank you for the help. You're welcome. Thanks for the question. I appreciate that. Well, that's it for today, you guys. I appreciate all of you coming in and hanging out for a little bit with great questions. And we're going to be doing these weekly, so keep your eye out open for these. Ideally, if you're a member of if you haven't already signed up for my production sound class, I'd love to have you join us over there. We have special pricing through the month of September. That's $49 for the class. And you can find that over on my YouTube channel. There's a video there explaining what's in it. And it has a link there for the discount code. The discount code is CJSound1. If you do just go to school.learnlightandsound.com. Again, love to have you join if that's right for you. If it's not, totally understand. We're going to keep doing what we do in our YouTube channel, and we're going to do these weekly hangout sessions as well. So appreciate that. And we'll do another one next week. So keep an eye on again, if you're in the class, that's one thing I forgot to say. If you're in the class, you can actually join with your webcam and we can talk. And then for those of you that aren't joined, love to have your questions over here in the Q&A section. So again, thanks for everyone for joining up. Thanks for your questions, and we'll talk to you again next week.